Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Chris Rossini, our co host. Chris, welcome to the program.
Happy Friday. Great to be with you, Dr.
Very,
Paul.
very good. We have lots of things we could talk about. There's a lot of things still going on in foreign policy in the two areas that we talk about, foreign policy and economics. But lately, economics is a big issue, mainly because it's narrowed down to a fight going on right now between two individuals that have high name recognition in this country. You know, the president and Elon Musk. All of a sudden, that partnership they have doesn't seem to be much of a partnership. I think they've been yelling and screaming at each other, and it doesn't surprise me. Not that I know their personalities and their characters, and I can predict that. But I think when we set off to solve our problems and you don't understand what's really going on as a bankruptcy, and nobody wants to admit it. But you know, this is a day that we usually mention a few things on the financial markets and also the metals market. I think right now the most interesting thing for me to look at is almost every day I mention about the gold price telling us a lot, and it still does. But you know, the price of silver is something that they've talked about for a long time. And I imagine I've watched that for the 20 or 30 years and all the many, many predictions. It is going to break out and it's going to skyrocket and go on and on. It certainly has, in spite of not seeing that big jump, it has steadily risen. You know, when I first bought silver for financial reasons, it was $1.29 an ounce. It's a little bit higher now, in the mid-30s. So it's gone up a lot. But if you look at it, it looks like the adjustment between the gold-silver ratios is changing, and people are buying silver. And that is interesting because it is a precious metal. And most of the time over the years that I watched it, the silver and gold and the shares went up basically together. There were always these predictions, but they never came through. But right now, it looks like a lot more people are getting interested in silver, and silver is money. It's probably, of course, second to gold over all of history, but it tells us something about what's going on. And that, of course, is the concern about the dollar, and the concern about the dollar is related to the concern about our deficits. And what's in our political system today is an argument going on between Musk and Trump. So this all comes together, and who knows what will happen. But we do know the value of the dollar will continue to go down. And it isn't so much that the price of gold and silver go up. When the value of the dollar goes down, the monetary metals will go up in value, and they have greater purchasing power. And that is what happened, and that's why it's important. And it's also a reason why people resort to some type of an investment or a connection with the precious metal if they assume that the dollar is going to get weak. And that's one of the reasons that we partner with Birch Gold Company, because that's one of their specialties. They talk about people being interested in the precious metal, especially gold, and how you can invest in it and how you can get around to even putting the metal itself into a money market fund. So this is holding the metals themselves makes a big difference. So that's why we do partner and offer an opportunity for our viewers to at least get in touch with Birch Gold. And if they want to get in touch with Birch Gold to get more information, what you do is you text, the number should be on the screen, text Ron 989898. And they will respond by sending you material. They do not charge for that material, but try to introduce or explain, how you might want to change your investments and make use of the opportunities that are now legal. For a while, they weren't legal. They didn't allow us to put the metal itself in the IRAs and in the pension fund. And that is open a door, but it's a technical thing because it's the government. But once again, if you want more information that will not cost you anything to read, it might cost you if you don't read it. So that you could text Ron 989898. And hopefully that will be helpful to you in making your decisions about how to protect against this monstrous debt and this thing that we're trying to talk about. And we'll be talking with Chris here in a second about how difficult things have become. I mean, it was a blockbuster, I guess, yesterday when it was found out that all of a sudden these bosom buddies who was, shaking the world with huge cuts, all of a sudden they're not agreeing with each other. They're not, I don't even know. No, matter of fact, you might say might not even be talking to each other because last I heard, somebody turned down a call, that is between Musk and Trump. But they will talk. I'm sure it will be worked out, but it's really in flux right now. There's a lot of uncertainties about that. But it shouldn't surprise anybody. It shouldn't surprise people. Should say, oh, I knew the personality of Trump. I knew the personality of Musk, and this was a predictable thing. I look at it and say, yes, it was predictable because they're dealing with something that is not solvable by cliches and tinkering with a budget and not doing what is necessary. A philosophic change in our monetary system, a philosophic change away from the theory that you can spend your way into prosperity and spend your way out of recessions and depressions. And we've been doing that. And right now, the real headline is we're bankrupt, and we're bankrupt financially and we're bankrupt morally, and it's very difficult to come in and cut anything. So they're talking about, well, the Republicans haven't come through quite yet, and they're pushing a bill that would literally raise the debt limit by $5 trillion. And they're supposed to be the conservative. So it's a mess, but it's a result of the fact that there is no easy answer. The treatment is much more serious, and it's going to be much more noticeable. And yeah, you say, yeah, will it hurt? Probably so. But what will it hurt? It'll hurt less than if we just don't do anything and we have total runaway inflation. That's when you run into Zimbabwe and Venezuela type of problems, which become political problems. And we're facing that too. Now, we have a discrepancy between the accumulation of wealth by the wealthy people now under today's circumstances versus the poor and the middle class, who the rich pretend they're helping all the time. Oh, we'll raise their minimum wage and we'll raise their benefits and all this. But it never keeps up. Wages, even with unions behind them, they never keep up with the price inflation of the living cost. So I think it's coming into a climactic end. And I think we're seeing these signs. And that's why a conversation between two giants involved in this, trying to find a solution, is not going that well. So, Chris, I'm sure you have an opinion on what we might do, because we've talked about this a lot, and it's not to beg the government to spend more money and print more money and take away more of our liberties.
That's right, Dr. Paul. Yeah. The bottom line, if I was to say it, is that Republicans never deliver, ever. You could give them every single position in the government, give them all the levers of power, and they constantly disappoint decade after decade, and they don't care. They don't care because they've gotten away with it for so long. But now there's a big change. What they normally do is they campaign like libertarians. Oh, there's small government, limited government. We're going to reduce those taxes. Those crazy Democrats, we got to stop them. They campaign like libertarians. And then once they're in power, they govern exactly like the Democrats, sometimes even worse than the Democrats. And especially in this last election, was there a libertarian tone with Elon, with Vivek. This was going to be different this time. And, enough time went by, people's emotions calmed down, and the Republicans went right back to their normal playbook. We got this big, beautiful monstrosity bill that no one could read again, and it contains more debt, more deficits, more spending. It's as if that election meant nothing, the exact opposite. And Elon, now they're messing with a big counterforce. Elon had enough. And he's showing us that he was serious. And what did he do? He went to the best man in the House, Thomas Massie, who Trump trashed, And the best man in the Senate, Rand Paul, who Trump also trashed, and went and backed them up. I mean, what a amazing, amazing thing. And he's saying this is unacceptable. This is not what this last election was supposed to be. We need a slim and beautiful bill, not a big, beautiful bill. And you were supposed to stick to what you were elected to do. So obviously, you know where the Ron Paul Liberty Report stands on this argument. But these are now exciting times again that we live in, and hopefully it turns out well.
You know, one thing about government is they don't apply the rules that they enforce on the people, especially in the moral sense. I mean, like, people aren't allowed to lie, cheat, and steal and kill people. And the governments, you know, at least pretend they go out and they're opposed to this. But when it comes to participating in lying, especially, governments lie a lot to us, whether it's lying about the Kennedy assassination or whatever. But on a daily basis, they lie to us and mislead us about the statistics on how well we're doing in order to, build up this huge spending and passing out the favors and not worrying about the deficits, because it's a propaganda scheme to perpetuate the strength of the empire, and also satisfy themselves with looking at their education that they've had the past 150 years, because in the composite of this is that we're doing exactly what the professors have taught over all this time. Don't sweat it. And this gold is stupid. Central banks are vital. And ever since 1913, it's been downhill for the republic. And now we're in this mess. But this morning there was a report, though. Somebody might say, Ron, you're overreacting. There was a report. There were more jobs created than they expected. And the stock market said, oh, okay. And the stock market, last I looked, was skyrocketing. I mean, up trillions of dollars. But guess what? When you read between the lines, if you took the last 2 months before that, the actual payroll was going, it was going down. So it's always fudging things. So this one that they just had reported today, it wasn't even that gigantic, but people are so anxious to hear the good news, because there's there's still the atmosphere of the bubble there, and we got to get in on this. And but the markets, they should realize, are stronger and more powerful and more influential than the politicians and all the people who are trying to rig what's going to happen. And they cannot run an empire, whether it's a huge world empire dealing with economic policy, or one where they're dealing with military policy and a reserve currency policy. It doesn't work. Eventually it collapses. All great nations failed in this manner. And I think days like today, I think they're fooling themselves to think that, and they more or less, with that one report, at least for an hour or two, they've totally ignored what is bursting forth, where you see the two giants who are involved and had the most influence about spending and the deficit, are at great odds. So, but the market's telling us, and I say that if you're worried about prices going up and the inflation that we have, don't look at government reports, and because they're not, the CPI is not a trustworthy thing. But what you should do is talk to people who go to the grocery store, talk to the people who have to live on an income that's relatively fixed, even with minimum laws and labor unions helping to boost up labor price costs. It doesn't keep up. Historically, they always fall behind. The rich tend to be able to capitalize on it. And there have been statistics that said the wealthy in this particular period of time have benefited more than most of the time when the wealthy people benefit by the bubble. So it is there, but the bubble is leaking, and it's in some areas it's already burst. And this is the reason why people should get prepared. And my preparation is do the best I can to protect my family and all. But I really have decided a long time ago that all of this stuff really doesn't matter if you don't have your freedom to make your own choices and you are seen as free agents to do what you like if you don't hurt other people. And that's where the real challenge is. Chris?
That's right. That's a very important philosophical issue that we, try to hammer away on over and over. One positive that I see is the normal is for the government once they're in power is they get away with it because there's never a strong enough counterforce against them, against the media, because especially the older generations now, they go to the TV. And the TV is there for the government. It is not there for you. They are there to sell you on why you need this war, why you need this welfare, and why this is good for America, over and over, administration after administration. And you're not going to find, the right voices on there. You're going to find people that are largely in line with this. So that's been the pattern. People go to the TV. Well, now there is something called X, and it's owned by Elon Musk, and Elon Musk himself reaches 100+ million people sometimes when he writes something. This is something that the White House has not had to deal with before. This is now a very big pain because nobody is going to censor Elon Musk. He owns X. And when he says something that is against the government, that you guys are frauds, that you're not shrinking the government like you said, now there is a strong counterforce that you're not going to find on the television. They're not there for you. Okay, so this is good. This is good. And if you're not on X, I recommend you do get on there. There's plenty of trash everywhere because that's part of human nature. You're going to get all types of opinions, but they're all on there. And the truth is on there. Now you have to find it. It's not going to be handed to you on a platter, but it's there. On TV, you're not going to find the truth anywhere. That's prohibited. So think about getting on X and finding all these different points of view, because this is ultimately what the citizens need, not to go sit in front of a screen and be told how it is.
Very good. Trump has the pen, like all presidents have, where they can write executive orders. And it's come to believe that a president can do anything he wants with an executive order. He can take us to war. He can spend money secretly. He can close shop when the people want to have audits of what's going on in the government. So the executive order is very, very powerful. And a president has constitutional authority to write some executive orders, but not to revamp the whole system. But right now, if you tend to have problems going and you have a president that enjoys and understands how powerful the executive order is, all of a sudden we get a bunch of it. And the conditions here really lends itself. People are sick and tired of what they've been going on. The election said this, too much spending of money. Let's get Musk in here and close his shop down. So, and this was all done, with the use of executive orders. But I think there's a lot of evil in this. I think that they have already, for a long time, overextended their power. And right now, we have so many problems. One thing that they're doing, you see, is we send money, we take it, steal it from the people, it goes to Washington, through executive order and congressional authority, we send this money. We have all the universities indoctrinated. They have to teach in interventionism and big government policies and hard metals for money, and they do that. And then when they don't do it exactly like the president wants, like right now today, it's almost become a crime if you say, why don't you give the Palestinians a chance? What are they? What's their beef? And why is this real? What's going on over there? You can get kicked out of school. You say some of them, received an executive order to send people home, and there is an attack on immigration of this sort. Recently, the president announced that there's a ban on 12 countries of immigrants coming in. And his justification was, well, there's some bad people coming in. Well, why don't you close the gates and let them come in and be examined before you open up the gates? And I'm sure the president would agree with me on that. Those 4 years before his administration came in, people just marched in here, and that became a problem. But the solution isn't canceling it out. You're not going to have it. Mercantilism is an extension of price controls and protectionism and tariffs and all these things. But mercantilism, I think when you deny people from coming in, it's chasing people away from getting an education here, which if they come here, and there was a time when most of them learned what freedom was all about, and they could carry those messages back home, or they'd stay and become good workers here. But right now it's almost like a protectionism that we don't even want people to come in, because maybe 1 out of 100 is going to be a criminal. So I see this whole thing about, especially if it's executive order on regulation, say, well, in these 12 countries, nobody's allowed to come in here, and we're going to put restrictions on them. So I think the more the merrier. But the more we do it wisely, the better too. And there was a time in our early history, a lot of people came, but they just didn't walk in, and they were checked out, and they had to have sponsors and this sort of thing. So, but I see it as very damaging. First, giving too much power to the president, where he can open and close and say, and he can do this with regulations. If the universities, after we buy their control because we send them money, we can tell them what to do and what kind of demonstrations they're allowed to have on the campus. Maybe there are demonstrations that shouldn't exist. But if you have privacy, private ownership and control, not government, the government couldn't come in and say, all right, we don't approve of that type of resistance that you're expressing here. And then they say, all right, if you don't change that and get rid of it, we're taking away your money. So it's a system that is so bad, and the only answer isn't regulate and say, well, we're only going to let you have demonstrations after we approve what you're going to say. What you have to do is take the money away. First, you quit stealing it from the people, and then you don't have any money to pass out around the country and get people dependent on this stolen money, and because especially with the president with an executive order, he said, I'm going to cut your largesse. I'm going to cut that out. And it's even existing right now with this battle between Trump and Musk. You can't even be in business in this country if you're not involved with country. But it's going back and forth now. Okay, if you do this, I'm going to do this to your companies, and education and all. There's just too much government, and they think they can control it by denying people the temptation that they've used to tempt people to become dependent on the government. And that's where I see it all ending, because eventually the money you pass out won't be worth much, and the people aren't going to have money that's going to be buying very much. So we ought to really get serious about, what kind of a system are we going to replace this monster with? Because the monster of an economy and a foreign policy system is going to end.
Very good, Dr. Paul. I have one final comment on this big, beautiful bill. And on its own, it's a loser, but it contains a very bad provision in there. People, when you have a big, beautiful bill, they'll jam all types of tyranny into it. One of them that Thomas Massie has pointed out is there's a provision banning state and local governments from regulating AI for 10 years from the federal government. The federal government can override local laws, zoning laws. So it's neutering the states from protecting their own people for 10 years when it comes to AI. I mean, this reminds me of the COVID and the big pharma jabs. How, they had immunity from what they did. Something goes wrong, don't go back to them. So this is giving immunity to the federal government and the corporations involved from the states being able to protect their people. And it's a shame it's like this, because technology is wonderful. Technology is supposed to, serve our needs as people. Look how it's serving us right now. This is technology, how this show is being transmitted. But you need a benign government. You can't have a government. Government doesn't look at technology in that way. They use it against us, against all the American people, and that's a shame. They use it for surveillance. They used it for censorship during COVID. So does it have to be that way? No, you can have a government that is not looking to enslave you. That's not what we have today. We have a government that is dead set on using AI and anything that they can get their hands on to enslave us. So taking the states, neutering them for 10 years is in this big bill. And that is very bad. The states, the states are bad too. Let's not, mince words here. But the option has to be there that if the people are upset, at least they can go to their states and, and have them represented against the federal government. If the states are neutered for 10 years and the federal government has free reign, they're going to just steamroll over this country. So this big, beautiful bill contains this. And that's yet another reason that it has to go down.
Chris, this is a very important point, and it's great that you brought this up. But it's a demonstration because we're really talking about how do you handle problems like this under in a republic and with a constitution. It's not like you say, well, the states can do anything they want. It's just who's going to be the regulator. So sometimes just total freedom. The individual's the regulator on how he spends the money. He might do well, he might not do so well, but the individual the more local, the better. And there has to be some basic rules because the rules that our federal government doesn't follow, they're not allowed to lie to us and badger us and threaten us. And you make the point about the issue of the states versus the federal government. So it's messy, and right now, one major step that we like to see is saying, well, it's not perfect because we never get to perfection, but moving in the direction of self-market regulations, at least get, the United Nations out of it and get the federal government out of it and say, look, the Constitution said this type of a problem should be handled at the state level. Now, we already have a really neat example of some benefit that has come, from what Musk has done. And that is that there's a called attention to the Department of Education. And people now say, yeah, where is it in the Constitution that the federal government to do the education and then control thinking? Of course, that's what I think caused our problems in this whole past century. So it's at the local level. Now they're talking about taking the Department of Education and taking all those things, all those regulations, and not just writing them off the book, just turn it back to the states. Don't give them any more money. Let them raise their own money and save the money at the federal level. And the money will find its way because there's still a lot of privacy, homeschooling and private schools and universities that won't take federal money. But predominantly, the schools are always dependent, and that means that they then assume that they have the right to regulate the First Amendment. Then they come in and if you say that, we're taking your money away. So that is done in education. So there's no reason why something like AI can't be mentioned. And why can't you take this problem and let it be handled at the state level? But to have this set up, which seems to be what Thomas is worried about, is the states may be excluded. And that happens too. So it's endless. You think you're going to put out a fire here and 6 more fires break out because this is a monster of a problem that we have because the government's involved in just about every part of our lives. And if you think you can have perfect answers at home, no, there's a lot of taxing problems with the individual states and local communities. So it's this idea of big government versus personal liberty and personal responsibility. Of course, we're on the side of personal responsibility and personal liberty. We believe that is the road to peace and prosperity. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.